What if you wanted to pull off the perfect crime? There's a lot to think about. Alibis, evidence, forensics. Well, here's a tip from me. See if you can find an associate with a condition called a dermatoglyphia. A dermatoglyphia is known as immigration delay disease. These people look completely normal. They act completely normal. They have no underlying health problems. But they're missing a key thing. Fingerprints. See, there's a gene found in an exceedingly small number of people, which results in completely smooth fingertips. They leave smudges on the things they touch, but no fingerprints. And the skin oils and the smudges might be enough to leave behind some DNA evidence, but you will never hang a rap on these people because of their fingerprints, because they don't have any. So there's a secret in how to commit the perfect crime. You need a dermatoglyphiac. Now let's get to some secrets about rock.
This is The Secret History of Rock with Alan Cross.
Welcome again, I'm Alan Cross, and on this edition of The Secret History of Rock, we're going to talk about bad career moves, along with some not-so-great moments in censorship. We'll review 1977 and talk about the dwindling awesomeness of album artwork, and yes, we will have another useless information segment. First up, though, I want to talk about movie soundtracks. They were one of the first things to be released on stereo long-playing albums back in the late 1950s. Original cast recordings of musicals were considered to be part of the realm of good music, which also included classical performances and jazz. Rock and roll was not considered good music back then. These albums featured the original scores and the original songs from the film. Sometimes there was even dialogue included. In the days before big movies made it to TV and long before VCRs and DVDs, it was kind of like listening to the movie at home. And it was a huge business. The Sound of Music soundtrack was the biggest selling album of 1965, 1966, 1967, and 1968. Now, of course, the Beatles pioneered the idea of a rock and roll soundtrack album with movies like A Hard Day's Night and Help. But it wasn't until the end of the 1960s that we started seeing movies that used singles of the day as an integral part of the score. Film critic Roger Ebert talks about this in his memoir, Life Itself. Around the same time, the original Woodstock Festival issued a soundtrack album to the movie, and that was a big success. By the middle 1970s, movie soundtracks were selling by the hundreds of millions. The double set for Saturday Night Fever stayed at number one for 24 weeks in 1978 and sold more than 15 million copies. And after that, finding a big name to write songs for your movie became a very big deal. Pink Floyd, they did a lot of movie music pre-Dark Side of the Moon. Even smaller film producers got into the act. Just think about American Graffiti and what George Lucas did with that soundtrack. There were tons of movies that used punk and new wave songs, and many of them issued single and double set featuring these tracks. Rock and Roll High School with Ramones, Times Square with XTC, The Talking Heads, Patti Smith, Lou Reed, and many others. And The Harder They Come introduced millions to the reggae of Jimmy Cliff and Toots and the Maytals. Record labels and managers began to realize that getting a song into a movie, onto its soundtrack, and in the trailer could be very, very good for business. Just ask these guys.
Girl,